In 1975, a man stole the equivalent of $3.5 million in broad daylight. He carried no weapon, he wore no mask, and when the dust settled, the police couldn't touch him because every single step of the operation was strictly legal. The architect of the heist was Barney Curley. To the bookmakers, Curley was a terrifying figure. He treated the gambling industry like a poorly designed machine, carefully taking apart its gears to see exactly where it would break. He recognized a simple truth. If you want to extract a massive payout from a closed financial network, you don't break the vault, you find a flaw in the plumbing. To understand how he did it, look at this scale. Bookies set a baseline payout, the odds, and wait for money. Watch what happens when cash hits one side. The system automatically defends itself by instantly dropping the odds. In 1975, Curley was in deep trouble. He owed a staggering £12,000 to ruthless bookmakers, and he needed a massive injection of cash to survive. He faced a seemingly impossible math problem. To clear his debt, he had to place a huge bet. But the very act of putting that much money on the table would trigger the house's defense mechanism, crashing his potential winnings before the race even began. The first step of his solution involved a horse named Yellow Sam. Curley bought the runner and intentionally entered him into races on the wrong terrain, ensuring the horse would struggle. Here is how that string of intentional losses affected his rating. As Yellow Sam's official performance metrics dropped, the bookmakers adjusted their risk models, eventually assigning the horse astronomical 20-to-1 odds. Of course, those odds were incredibly fragile. Curley had scraped together £15,000. If he walked up to a counter and bet that sum, the house algorithm would instantly correct the payout to pennies. Securing an underrated horse gave him the potential for a massive payout. Actually extracting that money required him to blindfold the system entirely. This network map outlines how the 1970s betting infrastructure shared information. Off-track betting shops in towns and cities took the public's money, then immediately telephoned the central hub, the bookies at the racetrack, so they could lower the odds. Curley selected a highly specific target for his operation, Bellowstown, an isolated rural racecourse located 26 kilometers outside Dublin. This schematic reveals the fatal flaw Curley found in their setup. Every single betting shop in the country relied on one solitary public telephone booth at the Bellowstown track to communicate with the central hub. That thin copper wire was the only link between the money being spent and the algorithm setting the price. On June 26th, Curley deployed an army. He handed cash envelopes ranging from £50 to £300 to 300 trusted accomplices scattered across the country. He gave them strict instructions. Wait inside the off-track shops. Do not spend a penny until exactly 25 minutes before the starting gun. Meanwhile, at Bellowstown, Curley's associate, Benny, stepped into the solitary public phone booth. He dialed a number, began sobbing loudly about a dying aunt, and completely refused to hand the receiver to anyone else. Looking back at the network map, here is what happened the moment the 25-minute mark hit. 300 accomplices dumped £15,000 onto Yellow Sam. Frantic shop managers rushed to call the track and lower the odds, but their data hit a solid wall. The only phone line was busy. Cut off from the outside world, the trackside bookies saw no new money coming in. As you can see, the 20-to-1 multiplier stayed completely locked as the horses burst out of the gate. Running on his preferred solid ground, Yellow Sam tore past the competition, winning the race easily by 2.5 lengths. By executing a flawless, low-tech denial-of-service attack, Curley had managed to move the money while completely freezing the information. The math finally worked in his favor. His hijacked odds turned a total exposure of a few £1,000s into a pair of £300,000, the equivalent of $3.5 million today. The bookmakers were furious. As a final act of spite, they paid out the entire sum in £1 notes. It took 108 massive bags to hold the cash, but they had to pay. Curley hadn't drugged a horse or bribed a jockey. He had simply asked a friend to make a perfectly legal, albeit lengthy, phone call on a public line. The racing authorities immediately patched the system. They instituted a strict new rule requiring all large bets to be declared at least 30 minutes before a race started. Curley proved that true power in any financial system comes from locating the exact physical bottleneck where the network relies on an assumption and simply pulling the plug.